encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield. This is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. Welcome to Season 15, Episode 9. We return to our listener requests, and today we're talking about balancing boundaries. Our listener has written in and said, how do I find the balance when I feel overwhelmed? Balancing the pulpit, visiting, members' needs, evangelism, family life, and the rest. Here to help us discuss this topic today is Dale Jenkins, no stranger to the podcast or to you. Dale Jenkins, officially this is the first time you've been on since this has been the case, of the Jenkins Institute. I guess you've always been of the Jenkins Institute, but anyway, now you're only of the Jenkins Institute.
That's right. So I've introduced myself at Preachers Luncheons for years as presently preaching at the Spring Meadows Church of Christ.
Yes.
It raised eyebrows. It's like, no, every preacher is presently preaching where they're preaching because none of us are forever at that role. But I'm excited now to be a part of this work. I've been blessed to preach for about 45 years, and now I get to just spend my time talking and trying to help encourage preachers. So we're loving it.
Definitely is a help and an encouragement. TheJenkinsInstitute.com website recently got a facelift. It looks nice.
Well, thank you. We were very blessed. Our website's gone through about 4 iterations, maybe 5. And we've had some really nice people who have, through the years, volunteered to help us. And usually when they do, they keep the keys to the Cadillac and they build it and then they leave us. And so several years ago, Jeff said, I'm going to build a website. And so the website we've used for a number of years is one Jeff built. It wasn't beautiful or anything, but we knew how to operate it.
Yes.
And when we decided to go full time, we thought we need to upgrade this thing. And we've been very, very blessed and very thankful for some help in that. And it turned out looking pretty good. It looks much better, in my opinion, more organized and easier to navigate.
Among my favorite things on TheJenkinsInstitute.com, first of all, scoops. I mean, you got to go with scoops, right? It's always good. And then Tji Research. That's a good thing. I'm always intrigued. The one most recently from when we're recording this, Mom's Influence on Ministry. How about that? That was quite interesting. Everybody's results and all of that. Yeah. That was cool. So anyway, I'm just talking, but this is neat. I like this. And there's a brand new journal or magazine. Tell us about this? What do we call this?
It's a journal. We're calling it a journal because a journal sounds fancier than magazine.
Okay, good.
When we started probably 10 years ago, we had a magazine that we used, an e-zine we called it then, and we loved doing it and enjoyed doing it. It was a lot of work and all, but it was really neat. And probably about 3 or 4 years ago, a guy said, there are a number of these groups like Gospel Coalition and all that they just have a conglomeration of guys that write for their publication, and they just use them, and it works great and everything and wonderful, and you ought to do that. And so we said, yeah, we'll do that. And so we killed the magazine, and we never did the other, simply because one of the two Jenkinses is nervous about just using random articles from other people. I won't call any names, but it's not me. So we started talking back in January about things we would probably be adding and all. We decided then we want to go back because we don't know of a magazine within Churches of Christ that is devoted to preaching and preachers. And we wanted it to be practical, but also serious. And so, and one of our goals is as well, if you look at it, it's not to be long. We don't want a long 75-page journal. We have 15 to 16 pages in this issue, and our goal is never to go over about 25 pages in it. And so that's kind of a couple of goals we have with it.
It's great. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And about it coming back in its new format too. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Well, today, our listener has asked us to talk about balancing boundaries. And the issue of balance is one that has come up a lot in the last 10 years on this podcast. I think we're all trying to figure this out a little bit. And there are some preachers who will call themselves realists who say balance isn't a thing, or whatever. And we sort of have to define our terms of what we mean by that, right? I mean, nobody can be balanced in the sense of giving equal time to tasks, just because the whole sleep thing messes that up. And that seems like an important thing to do. So, we find ourselves back here again, but I think it's important to come back to this fairly frequently. Specifically, not just finding balance in any time, but when I feel overwhelmed. I live here. Can we start there? I mean, is it common for preachers to feel just, I don't know, overwhelmed?
Let's put it this way. If you don't feel overwhelmed now and then, you're probably not doing it right.
Okay. I feel better.
Good for you. I don't know. I don't know a young preacher I ever talked to that's serious about what he's doing that hasn't had this struggle of how do I, spend time with family? How do I minister? How do I minister and then not neglect my family? How do I continue to do the amount of study I need to do but still visit people or evangelize, teach lost people? How do I, serve older people while trying to reach out to new people, to young Christians? And the truth is, I don't know that balance exists. I don't know that it is a real thing. I don't know in the life of the minister that any hardworking minister will ever sit back and say, I got this licked. I got this all figured out. I have perfect balance in my life. I have the exact amount of time I need to spend with my kids. I spend the exact amount of time I need on my marriage. I spend the exact amount of time I need in prayer. I spend the exact amount of time I need in visiting. I have it down to a science. If that person exists, I will buy their book. It'd be beautiful to see. And I do see guys that seem to kind of float through life with an ease about them that is impressive to see. But then when I talk to those guys, and I do because I'm impressed by them, when I talk to those guys, they say, well, I don't think I've got it figured out by any means. I struggle all the time trying to figure out how to. I think that the only preacher that doesn't struggle with this, and I've got to be careful here, is probably the one that's a little lazy and that does it. That is neglecting either on purpose or by accident certain parts of his ministry. Paul told Timothy to make full proof of your ministry. So if I'm going to fulfill that, if I'm going to fill my ministry to the top, then it's going to mean that I've got to really work hard to do that. And at times I'm going to get it wrong. So I have a few things, Robert, I wrote down about this feeling of being overwhelmed that may or may not be useful, but I want to kind of just work my way through them, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds like just initially what you're saying is part of the battle here is just an awareness, and having an awareness of the fact that I'm trying to give the appropriate amounts of time to these things is probably half the battle, or at least a good sign that you're on the right track. I guess.
Yes, sir. I think that's absolutely right. The awareness of it. Of course, I mentioned Paul's writing to Timothy in 2 Timothy, but the text that comes to mind anytime we talk about time management, it's got to be Ephesians 5:16, redeeming the time because the days are evil, or as the ESV says, making the best use of my time, which seems like a really simple translation of that verse. It's like, oh, well, that's what I'm trying to do.
Is that all it is? Yeah.
Yeah. Is that all that is? So, okay.
Good.
You're overwhelmed. I can't tell you the days in my ministry when it's like, all right, I'm preaching tonight and I've studied and I've tried to prepare, but this lesson is not ready yet. But I've got to go to the hospital, and I need to have lunch with my wife because I've not seen her in 3 days. I need to get a couple of visits done with some people that I need to see. I've got a couple of phone calls to make. but I've got to preach tonight at 7 o'clock, 100 miles from here.
Mm.
And it is, I can tell you that is so overwhelming. So here's some things that have been helpful to me. The first one is simply breathe. It will be okay. This day will pass, and give yourself a few weeks and another one will come along like it again. And that's perfectly fine. When that happens, when you feel overwhelmed, pray and breathe. Realize that God loves you. And I don't know what this statement even means fully, but He has you. He's
Mm.
on your side in this. He understands you're doing the best you can do, and He never expects the impossible out of you. God is the one that does the impossible, and He may do the impossible through us, but we're not the ones doing the impossible. He doesn't expect you to do what can't be done. He expects you to be faithful. That's what's required of a steward, according to 1 Corinthians. And
Mm.
and that's the requirement. I've got to strive for faithfulness, not for doing what can't be done. So that's kind of a larger, overwhelming thought for the first thought, but it's okay to realize that I don't have it all together. It's okay for me to say, "All right, I heard a preacher one time say, you ought to spend at least 30 hours in preparation for every sermon you present."
Mm.
Well, what a wonderful concept. I mean, that's so pretty and everything. But what if I'm preaching 6 times on
Right.
6 assigned topics this week? That means 180 hours for preparation. Well, that's nice. That isn't that pretty? You
Yeah.
you can't do that all the time, and it's okay. Now, I'm not advocating laziness or ill preparedness. I don't believe in that. I was spending some time with our mutual friend Steve Hickenbotham this week
Mm-hmm.
here at the Focal Point, where I'm speaking as this is being recorded, and Steve and I were talking. He said, I hate that I have to leave, but I've got to go prepare. I've got to spend some more time preparing this lesson I'm presenting.
Yeah.
Well, Steve is always so well prepared, and you would never think that he ever struggles to be well prepared. But we started talking, and he and I think a little alike on this, which should scare him. Yeah. Here's what I thought. Here's my life. A sermon is never done until it's preached.
Mm.
And not everybody's that way. I admire those guys that get their sermon ready by Thursday and they put it to bed and then, get up Sunday morning and preach it. And man, more power to you. I am thankful for you and proud of you if that's the case. But I never tried in local work to re-preach a sermon at my home congregation.
Mm.
On the road, I'll preach something I preached before. But at Spring Meadows, at Granny White, at Hamilton Crossroads, and Eva and Kossuth, I always try to be fresh every single week.
Mm.
And that would mean that on Sunday morning, while the song is being sung, before I stand up to preach, I'm not writing my sermon, but I might be marking through a note or a paragraph or adding a verse that came to mind during the worship time or whatever. That sermon is not done until it's preached.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand the need for study. I've spent my life in study, and you better study if you're a preacher. But don't be overwhelmed by the fact that you feel like you're not ready yet. It's okay. You're probably not ready yet. Keep on working on it. It's perfectly fine. God
Mm-hmm.
still loves you, and He does not expect the impossible out of you.
Mm. I love that. It's just nice to hear it said out loud. We're here in May, as we're recording this. Summertime's coming. That means a lot of fun, great activities, but it's a busy time. Here at the Light Network, we go dark during the summertime because we knew we couldn't keep a podcast load and speak on summer series and VBS and, whatever else it is that's going on locally and abroad. And yeah, I feel that. I've had those weeks where it's like, I'm supposed to speak 6 times between now and next Sunday. How am I going to do that? And you look back and you're proud that you survived it, but you're also like, don't do that on purpose again. But you do it again.
Well, I think, Robert, of the text from Luke, and I heard a preacher one time that I think he pulled the text out of context, I may be wrong and I may be right that he pulled out of context. If you pull out of context, it's the best pulling out of context I've ever seen.
Oh, nice.
But at the tomb, the angels speak to the ones that were there, and the angel says, "The Lord is risen and goes before you." And this person said, when you enter a hospital room, realize the Lord is risen and goes before you. And when you go into an elders meeting and you don't know what to expect, the Lord is risen and goes before you. And when you go to a confrontational meeting in a family counseling session, remember the Lord is risen and goes before you. When you go to a hospital room and you know this person is dying and you're going to have to talk to their family about that or be with them when that person dies, whatever the issue is. Now, again, I think that may be a stretch of that text, but it's the best stretch of a text I've seen because it gives me comfort. I often think when I'm walking into something that is, I'm not as prepared as I want to be. I don't know what I'm going to say. I talked to a guy the other day that had just gotten out of prison and he spent 4 years in prison, and I wanted to say the right thing to him, but I didn't know what I was going to say to him. And I just think the Lord's risen and goes before me. And again, that may be out of context, but it's a true statement regardless.
Right.
And I think all of us would do well, and it would bring peace into our hectic schedule that we can't quite wrangle when we realize the Lord is risen and goes before us.
Yeah. Okay, so that's number one. How many points are we working toward today, by the way?
Well, that was actually number two.
Oh,
Number
that was one and two.
Number two was remember. So I'm a appointed preacher.
That's good.
There's like 4 or 5 or 6
Okay.
on this list, but depending on how we number them, I'll keep
But
you
it's
guessing.
it's not done until it comes out of your mouth.
All right, the list isn't done yet. It's like my sermons, okay? All right.
Yeah.
So
All right, I think we're ready for 3. Yeah.
Ready for number 3.
That's
okay.
good.
Plan, but be flexible. Plan, but be flexible.
This is hard.
It's hard for some people. For some people,
Yes.
it's very easy. So one of the things I most dearly love about preaching about ministry is it's not putting sprockets on gizmos. It's not a production line. It's not I clocked in this morning at 8 o'clock and at 4:30 I'll clock out. It's not I'll work Monday through Friday. I'll put in 40 hours and it'll be done. It's not today I'm going to go in. I'm going to I'm going to bake the donuts, and tomorrow morning I'm going to go in. I'm going to bake the donuts, and the next morning it's different every single day, and that can be overwhelming. But how wonderful it is that this job. It's not really a job, it's a ministry, but this thing that we do is not boring. That's one thing about ministry, in my opinion, is it has never been boring. And so I plan every day. I'm a chronic planner. I know what I want to get done. I have a to-do list, and I'm going to get this much done on this today. I'm going to get this much done on this project. I'm going to finish this project. I'm going to take this project and throw it in the trash can. I'm a planner, but I know every morning when I wake up or every night when I go to bed, every one of those plans can change in a heartbeat, and it very possibly could happen. And it very probably will happen at least 1 or 2 days every single week. So, today's my sermon. All right, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna be at the office at 6 o'clock. I'm gonna study for 5 hours, and then this afternoon I'm gonna go visiting. And the phone rings at 6:30, and someone says, "My wife is being taken to the hospital, and we don't know what's happening, but we think she's had a massive heart attack." What do you do? Well, I'm sorry, but from 6 to 11 today, I'm going to be studying for my sermon next Sunday. I hope everything's okay. I'll be praying for you after 11 o'clock. You plan, but you be flexible. I think I first learned that on mission trips, how valuable it was. And the reason why I learned it on mission trips was everything on a mission trip is beyond your control. Schedule wise, we're gonna start this Bible study at 8 o'clock this morning, and 8 o'clock in most countries of this world, they don't live by the minute. 8 o'clock means, we'll get there. Worship service in America, we start our worship at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock and 5 seconds, we hadn't started, people are getting antsy. When I was in the Ukraine, 9 o'clock's when they started, but it may be 9:45 before they start. And as an American, you get really frustrated with that. We said 9 o'clock, we're going to start. Well, you don't realize the person that they're waiting on has taken 4 buses and walked 3 miles and missed one of the buses along the way and had to walk another 2 miles. And so they're running a little bit late today. Oh, well, all right. They've made a whole lot more effort than I did driving 2 miles in an air-conditioned car to the church building. I better be a little more patient with this. So you plan in every part of life. You plan. I think you prepare. You know what you plan on doing that day. You plan your week. You plan your month. But you be very, very flexible. And now that's going to mean at times, all right, I had today from 6 to 11 to plan my sermon for Sunday. That was when I was going to really dig deep into this thing and try to put it to bed. But I got a call at 5:30 that Sister Jones was having a heart attack, and I had to go to the hospital. And I spent the whole morning at the hospital with this family, and now I hadn't prepared. That may mean that night that instead of going to bed at 10 o'clock, I'll go to bed at 2 o'clock. I spend 4 hours at night. I wish I could say this is really simple and easy, but it's not. Ministry is hard, and we signed up for it. We didn't sign up for the easy. We signed up to sometimes go nights without sleep. We signed up sometimes to put a funeral together. Well, every time to put a funeral together within 48 hours of the time the person died. A little side tip here, Robert, on that for me is when I know someone is going to die. Now that's a weird statement, I know, but when brother Ed has cancer and the treatments are not going real well, and I talked to his doctor and they're not feeling real good about this. When I know somebody, Sister Pirtle is 93 years old. She can't live much longer. When I know somebody's getting close to death, I start a file. Ed got cancer, and I started a file on Ed. And I started writing notes down of memories I had and verses that came to mind when I thought of his life and the kind of person he was, and making notes about his family and all. So the one thing you don't want in your life, you don't want me to start a file on you, because then you're probably going to die with it.
It's coming.
That's a side note, but that's a little help for me anyway. But the point is, do you plan everything you can, but then be very, very flexible.
Yeah, I agree. I said it's hard. I guess I've learned a little bit about it. It's just the way it is, right? I mean, you can't change it. But boy, there are those. The stuff only happens when you have deadlines that are like hard deadlines, and that's when the schedule gets out of whack. At the same time, though, I mean, you're right. We signed up for it, and it's fulfilling. And knowing that you did the right thing and you were there in those moments, even though it was a sacrifice, you were there and you helped that person. You do it with joy. And
they won't remember the sermon from Sunday.
That's right.
But they'll remember you showed up at the hospital and spent 5 hours with them when they weren't sure if their mom was going to deliver or not. The greatest preachers I know are not the ones that do great homiletical sermons. I love great homiletical lessons. The greatest preachers I know are the ones that minister in people's lives, and they make an impact. Okay.
And they'll listen more carefully when you do preach because you were there.
I love to ask Christians, who's your favorite preacher? And 90% of the time it's some guy that I think, I've heard that guy preach. He's not that good. And then they'll say, because, when we found out our child had cancer, they come to our house and everything that man says affects my life now. That's a beautiful thing. So be thankful that we get to do this. And remember the risen Lord. The Lord is risen and goes before you. All right. Ready for the next point?
I'm ready. We're ready.
Okay. All right. Now, some of this, and I get asked a lot about scheduling, and I think it's because I hope I don't say this haughtily. I don't mean to, because I do a lot of stuff and I produce, and people therefore think that my schedule is somewhat in order. It is not. So here's the point: drop some stuff and learn to say no. Drop some stuff and learn to say no. Now,
Mm.
again, this is one of those things that preachers should not say. Do as I say, not as I do. Uh, I'm not good at dropping stuff. I remember when I moved to Nashville uh, 35 years ago now. So it's been that long? 25 years ago now. When I moved to Nashville, I'd always done sermon outlines for the audience on Sunday morning. And when I moved to Nashville, I started doing those Sunday night. And the first one I gave out, Melanie said to me, Dale, are you sure you want to do this?
Mm.
Because she knows that once I start doing something, it's hard for me to stop doing something that I start. So, but one of the things I've learned through time is that at times you do have to drop something. You have to say, all right, I like doing this, or I want to do this, or this is good, but I need to drop it. I liken it to an elder who's driving the church van. That's a really good thing that elders doing. But it's possible there's somebody else that needs to be involved in that ministry that you're taking that ministry from, and B, that maybe you should be more involved in the souls of people instead of driving a van.
Mm.
And again, that's not critical of anybody driving a van. It's just an illustration. Sometimes there are things we shouldn't be doing that we may love to do. That if we stop doing them, we would be more productive in doing the things that we should be doing.
Mhm.
And in addition to dropping stuff, this is one that just, God forgive me for saying this because it isn't how I live my life, but learn to say no. Learn to say no. I've got a friend. In fact, I was talking to my brother this morning about a preacher. I said, that man says no easier than anybody I've ever seen. And
Mm.
I guess that's a good thing. It's hard for me to say no. I like to say yes. I like to help people and do what I can do. But sometimes when you learn to say no, you're more productive instead of less productive. So again, on that one, do as I say, not as I do. Learn to say no.
There've been a lot of books written about that topic, learning to say no, learning to say yes, and leadership books especially are pretty good about, helping you decide what you can do to leverage your time the best, or winnowing down your goals so you know really what you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes the elders have a say in what your goals are, right? And sometimes the congregational needs have a say in what your goals are, or what you drop, or what you keep. But yeah, I mean, we can only focus on so many things at once, and I can only be an expert in so many things, or at least try to be.
You
It's
know,
good
I,
stuff.
I do remember, Robert, one time my elders had at a church I worked with had been on me for several years about something I didn't do well.
Mm.
And I'd been there long enough that I reached a point. I had a good enough relationship with those guys that I said, guys, I want to do better in this area. We talked about several different methods I could use to improve in that area. I want to do better in this area, but I finally said, guys, I just want to know if I don't get better, you're going to fire me over this. And they said, no, 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 we just think you'll do better. I said, okay, good. I'm
All
good
right,
now.
good to know. I feel better.
Sometimes they help. You can say the elders plan the schedule to know how important that really is to them. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right, ready for the
Yeah,
next one?
ready.
Because time's going to get away from us.
Yeah, it does
We
that.
manage our time well, right? Um, so that's what, number 5 on the list, I think.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Build a little fun into every time segment you can. I want to say to each day, but maybe need to be a little more than that. Jesus did not say, I came that you may endure life. He said,
Mm.
I came that life may be abundant. And there's some times when our schedules start kind of caving in on us, and when we're feeling that overwhelmed feeling, we forget that Jesus came to give an abundant life, not a life just to endure or to check off the list of to do things, that we're to enjoy what Christian living is. I mean, if we walk around always frustrated and miserable and unhappy because our schedule is imposing on us, imagine a non-Christian following around for 5 days and we're angry and we're frustrated all the time because we can't get everything done. And then we ask that, would that person want to be a Christian after having followed me around? Or would they say, why would I want to live that kind of lifestyle? So my suggestion is that you try to build some fun into that schedule. I mean, if you don't do that, you may be effective for a while, but you'll either burn out or you'll sin out, or you'll just get so angry that you'll just quit. So I think you got to build some fun into this thing, and if you don't, I think you'll really, really regret that.
When I preached in Pulaski, Tennessee, if someone had a serious issue that they needed to be in the hospital for, they went to Nashville. And so, the other minister and I would go up and visit. And as we were leaving, the secretary would say, well, where are you going to eat this time? Because, hey, I mean, we were in Pulaski. Nashville has all the options, right? I mean, of course we're going to go somewhere fun.
The Krispy Kreme right there beside St. Thomas, right?
Exactly. And you know what? You might as well. I mean, it's heavy, and yeah, we got to drive that distance, and yeah, it takes at least half a day, but it builds in the fun, and I think that's great. That's really good. By the way, a non-Christian could be following you around, or your kids could be following you around, or your wife, and I mean, I don't want to sour them on ministry because I'm so sour about how out of control my schedule is today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Number 6, 8, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
This one is going to kind of go counterproductive on everything I said so far, but do stuff.
Okay.
You want me to elaborate on that, or is that enough? Just do stuff.
That's clear enough. No, by all means, please. What kind of stuff are we doing here?
Well, so I think in ministry we have a responsibility to do what we can to make stuff happen, and for stuff to happen, we got to do stuff. And at times I've sat in my office and thought, man, nothing's happening right now, and wonder, I can wring my hands and talk about how bad things are, or, we're not growing, or there's not enough energy, or whatever. At some point, I just need to start. Let's make something happen. Let's do something. And don't live your life by your schedule so much you don't have time for some creativity and all right, let's make something happen here, or let's stop this and do this. Do something. I do not want to be that preacher that is forgotten because he did nothing at all other than clock in and clock out every Sunday morning and every Sunday night and every Wednesday night. I want to do what I can to make things happen. Now, all that within the bounds of what is right, and within the bounds of what is biblical and scriptural. I'm not suggesting you usurp authority, but I am saying that part of your job as a ministry is to make stuff happen. So do stuff.
Yeah, I like that. It is so easy to get to the end of a week and think, I only treaded water this week. That's all I did. I got my class done and I preached twice on Sunday, but that's all the time. And some weeks are like that. Yeah. But that creativity is so important. And that doesn't happen by slamming your schedule full. You got to have a little margin to be creative.
And sometimes you just got to step back and say, all right, I had margin and I lost it and I need to recreate it. I think that's part of it too. So. All right, got one more, and I see the clock is beginning to tick.
Okay.
I think we need a mentor. I think every preacher needs somebody they can sit down and talk with about this stuff. And I don't mean just young guys. I think even when we're older, we need somebody that can help us sort through it, and we can say, all right, I'm doing this, this, and this, and I don't feel I can get anything done. Or I'm doing all these things. I don't have any time for my family. What can I do? What can I drop? What can I do differently? What have you done in the past that helped you deal with this? Somebody in your life that can say to you, I've been watching you lately, and it looks like you're mad every time I see you. What are you doing right now? What's going on? We need somebody that will mentor us when it comes to our schedules, that will help us know how to balance the amount of study versus the amount of evangelism, how to balance the amount of ministry versus the time with your family. I'll talk to young guys sometimes and they'll say, you get so much done. Well, I may, but my kids are grown. I don't have 2 children at home. My wife works after my kids got grown. She now works a full-time job. Guess what? I have a little more time than some people have on their hands. And so, sometimes when we're young, Robert, we need to start, I can't do everything. I'll do what I can. In a few years, my kids will be grown. I'll have more time then, and I'll be able to focus more on this. I'll do the best I can. I may be treading water for a few years. For a few years, I may just be hoping I can stay above, but I know that time's going to change in my life. So it's all right. Somebody says, how do you go speak all these places? I do because I can now, but when my kids were little, I didn't because I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't necessarily because I didn't get invitations. That may have been some of it, but a lot of it was simply because I now have the time that I can be gone, and it's not as big a deal.
Yeah. Well, and no ministry experience is wasted. I mean, even if you tread water, you're still, at the very least, we would assume, gaining Bible knowledge because you're studying and you're producing the content. You're gaining experience because of the way people responded to that content. You're visiting and all of that, and it seems to me that is the kind of thing, the people who keep at it and really keep trying and do their best, that produces the sage who can go out and speak all the time and seems to ooze wisdom and all of that, because he's been in the trenches and he did the thing.
Let's build on that for just a minute, okay?
Okay.
When you talk about building wealth, the secret is not getting $1 million and putting in the bank. The secret is putting $200 or $300 a month in the bank.
Yeah. And
over a long period of time. That sustained growth is what they talk about. Well, what you just said is absolutely the truth. I mean, when I spent 2 years working through 1 Peter when I was a young preacher, and then now somebody calls me and says, we need to preach on 1 Peter 3:10. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I've got a bank already. I put that growth there. That doesn't mean I'm not going to go back and restudy, but I've already got the background. I've already got the foundation, the good bones to what I'm going to say. I know what that text means. I'm ready for it. I just now have to build something around that structure that's already there. The same's true in ministry. So, Sister, who did I say, Purtle, that had the heart attack.
Yeah.
This is her third heart attack that she's had now. And the first 2 times I went to the hospital and I stayed for 4 or 5 hours. And this time when I go and I say, I'd love to be able to be here the whole day, but I really have to leave right now. That family's not going to say, well, you never ministered us. You've banked something, It's true with your family as well. When your family's had to suffer because you're a minister, sometimes that happens. When they've had to suffer, though, and you've made it right later. When my kids had to suffer because I was a preacher, I always tried to do something good for them that they would enjoy as a result of that. Well, when you've done it 3 or 4 times, they begin to understand, all right, this is going to be, he's going to miss this, or we're not going to get to do this, or we have to come back early from this, but he's going to make it up later. You put those things in the bank, and over time, they do pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I'm not surprised to hear you talk about mentoring, and I know that you guys over at the Jenkins Institute, not that I'm accusing you of a shameless plug, because I'm not, but I know that it's something in which you all very much believe. You think it's an important thing to do, and you have the 222 mentoring. If somebody's, hey, what is that, or how do I become a part of that, or whatever, what do you say to that person there? This is on, I've got the website pulled up if you're watching the video, and you can go on there and learn a little more about that too.
Yeah, Jeff and I were just talking about 5 or 6 years ago now about so many young guys that are struggling and some that are going to the wrong sources for advice and all. And so we thought, what if we could take a situation where a young guy or even an older guy that was struggling in his ministry we helped him find a mentor. Because if I go to somebody and say, hey, Robert, I think you need a mentor and I'm going to be it. You're going to say, what? Why? I mean, no. But if you sign up and say, I need a mentor, well, then suddenly when you're assigned a mentor, you say, oh, I'm going to appreciate this. Mm-hmm. So we now have 2 classes. We'll start our 3rd class later this month. In fact, in about 2 weeks, there's going to be between 35 and 40 guys in it, which means there'll be between 70 and 80 guys that will be, when you count the mentor and the mentee, that will be involved in this specific thresh shift or not. That's not the right word. Setting of that class, mm-hmm. And that'll be our 3rd group, and we want to every year add 1 or 2 groups. And we hope that we can help the guys get together with people that will be solid, who have been effective in ministry, that love ministry and that love the church, and we'll send them in good direction. So yes, we do believe in mentoring.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
And it wasn't a shameless, but I really wasn't trying to.
No, I know that.
But I thank you for mentioning it. If you'd like to
Uh-huh.
know more about it, send me a message. I'll tell them more about it.
Well, and to me, it's just a demonstration of how well-rounded and practical, you guys are in your approach to helping ministers and serving God's servants, as you say. TheJenkinsInstitute.com is that website. Go check that out. And wow, thanks for the practical tips too for balancing boundaries. It's not a one-size-fits-all, right? I was thinking earlier when you said something about, some of us want real structure and science and all of that behind it. And I thought, I'm not sure ministry matches science. I mean, there's not enough. I'm sure there's something scientific about it, but there's not enough structure and repetition of formulas and all of that. I mean, it's like every day's different. I don't know that you can overlay a scientific plan over it.
Yeah.
But it's all good. And these are seasons. And I think, if we just breathe, it'll be okay. We'll get through.
Robert, I love you. I'm proud of you. Thankful for you and your family and the good work you have done and are doing and will do. Keep it up. Thank you very much for being a part of this thing every once in a while with you.
Well, and thank you for never saying no.
There you go.
Thanks all of you for listening or watching this edition of Preachers in Training. Reminder that brand new episodes release every Thursday from thelightnetwork.tv, our podcast partners, or on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. That's going to do it for this edition of Preachers in Training. Until next time, let's go preach the word.